Welcome to the 209 Journey podcast. I'm your host, Luis Urbano. And before we get started with the show, I wanted to ask everyone listening right now, if you can, it would be really amazing if you could share this podcast with a friend. That would actually mean a lot to me, and you would help us out a lot in making sure that we grow this podcast, which will be releasing episodes quite more often than I was releasing episodes previously. So be on the lookout for that. I do have a lot of guests lined up here in upcoming weeks. So you will definitely have more content. So if you haven't subscribed to the show yet, please subscribe wherever you might be listening to it. We're on different platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even Facebook as well. And with that being said, social media wise, you can find us at the 209 Journey on Twitter. Also on Facebook, just search for the 209 Journey and you should be able to see it there as well. So let's get started with tonight's episode. Let's go. So our special guest today is a Turlock native. She actually went to my alma mater, CSU Stanislaus, where she majored in communication and media studies. Currently, she's the lead reporter for Turlock Journal, and she also writes for the 209 magazine, produces the Studio 209 show, and also co-hosts the 49 Carats podcast, a 49ers podcast also. Angelina Martin, welcome to the 209 Journey. How's it going?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. It's going well. It's a nice Wednesday evening. Can't complain, and happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I know weather-wise, it's supposed to be getting a little warmer. I know the tweet you just posted not too long ago.
So yeah, it's going to be 80 this weekend. That's insane.
Yeah, well, I guess, the weather's actually trying to fulfill my wish, because when it got too cold, I was like, all right, just give me 80, 90 degree weather again. And I got to be careful what you wish for, I guess. So let's go ahead and get started with something that I like to start every podcast with. And that's all about you really telling me more about growing up in the 209 and for you specifically in Turlock. So tell me more about how that was like for you.
Yeah, so I grew up in Turlock, born and raised here, as you mentioned, and I grew up on Mitchell Avenue, which is kind of near the west side of Turlock, but not quite to the tracks, near the downtown area. So if you know where KFC and Fails Donuts are, I lived right on that street that goes away from those two businesses. So it was an awesome place to grow up. I was raised by my grandparents. Both of my parents were unable to care for me due to drug addiction issues. And so my grandparents became my legal guardians. They raised myself and my brother. And honestly, I would say they did a stand-up job. I mean, I turned out okay. So it was a great place to grow up in Turlock. I went to Turlock schools. We would spend weekends fishing. My grandpa would take us fishing at the Old Fisherman's Club along the Tuolumne. I don't know if any of your listeners have ever been there, but it's an awesome place. And I mean, yeah, growing up in the 209 is different because especially in Turlock, it's a small town feel where everyone knows everyone. But over the years, it's gotten bigger and bigger, right? As more people move here and the city expands outward into the country. So, bit about me. I mean, I went to Turlock High School, my freshman school. I took journalism class for the first time ever there. I ended up transferring to Turlock Christian. I played travel softball my whole life, played a year of varsity of softball at Turlock High, played 3 years of varsity softball at Turlock Christian, went on to play softball my freshman year at Stanislaus State. And then I just kind of made the decision that it wasn't for me anymore. I started working at the university police department at the college. So that was a great time. And then that was when I decided that I wanted to be a journalist. So, I went from softball being my life to writing being my life in the span of 2 years. And now I'm here. And I still haven't left Turlock. So it's a great town. I love it. And I love covering the news here. So couldn't ask to be anywhere better.
Yeah, and I think for anyone covering any local news, especially for Turlock, you need to have someone that actually grew up there, right? Especially so people can relate to that person and everything that there is to know about the town. And so it's good.
Yeah. Everyone that I work with makes fun of me because when I interviewed for the job, I told, my now boss who was interviewing me at the time, I told her that I grew up reading the Turlock Journal and I grew up like looking for my name in the sports section when we would have games,
Mhm.
and grew up like that was my first introduction to news. And so I told her that it was my dream job to work there, which they laugh at because, it's a small community newspaper, but really like exactly what you said, there's no cooler thing than to grow up in a town, to live here all your life, and then be able to like cover it. It's so fun because obviously I know the city like the back of my hand. Like if there's a car accident that I need to go out to, I know exactly where that is without having to look it up on Google Maps. The business owners that have been working here for decades because you were once a little kid going into their store. Now you're going back asking to write an article about them. So yeah, it's really cool and I love to do it.
When you told me where you grew up at or the area, it just gave me flashbacks to this really great place. And I don't know if you remember it, but it was a taco bus of sorts on Canal Drive. You could actually eat inside the
Yes.
bus. You remember going there?
Yeah. Oh my God. And you know what? I didn't even like register that it's gone until you just brought it up. Yeah. Like what happened to it? I know exactly where you're talking about, on the corner of Golden State and Canal, in that little gravel lot. Now there's a Starbucks there, which is insane. Starbucks popping up everywhere, Dutch Bros too. But yeah, I went there. It's super cool. It would get hot in there, but like you have to do it at least once. It's like a rite of passage of living in Turlock.
I think he had a little fan, if I remember correctly, because I actually was there during really hot days, and I think
Yeah.
he had something because otherwise I probably wouldn't be in inside a
The
bus with
food
a
was worth
hundred.
it though.
It was, and the story I always like to tell is that I really befriended the guy who would do everything right. I mean, this was an older guy; he was probably in his 60s, and he would cook. He would take your order. He would bring your order out to you, right? And one time, I actually had just parked on the street, and I was, going to do my usual thing, right? Okay, I'm gonna do my order, which was usually a carne asada burrito, and he already had it ready for me. He
Aw.
literally just like had the bag, and he's like, "All right, you know the total." And he was one of the few taco. I say taco truck, but taco bus, but just people get
Yeah.
the idea that actually would actually take credit cards. So that's how I started going more because I really don't carry cash with me. So
Yeah. I was
yeah.
just thinking about that the other day, how like you would have to go to the taco truck in town that accepted debit, like if you didn't have cash. And I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, wow, like now all of them take card. But I remember when like cards weren't really a thing yet, and it was like the select few. That's funny you brought that. I was literally just thinking about that, like how far we've come.
Yeah, and even when he would take card, it was always beyond me. I'm like, how doesn't no one else take card? Like you could have so much more business if you just got, and all he had was just a little card reader that was
Yeah.
connected to a cell phone. Like it was that simple, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, but I'm not sure what happened to him.
You know
I
what?
think he moved. Would be my
I'm a
idea.
reporter. I will get on the case and I'll let you know. I will find out. It's my new mission.
Yeah, but please do so because the guy was really great. I know last I heard actually, I mean, I don't know when it happened or what, but I know that he was saying that he was trying to sell the business, literally the
Mm,
whole bus and all that because he was already at an age where he should have already been retired, and his mom
right.
kept telling him, right, like you should already retire to sell it already. And so I think he may have sold it, but
That's probably it.
I'm not sure where they moved. I would assume that if someone buys it, they're probably in the area somewhere in the 209. So yeah, if we could find it, I want to go back there wherever they're at.
Yeah. This is a call to action to all listeners. If you see the taco bus, let us know.
Yeah, and take a picture. I mean, there might be other imitations already out there, but I know he was pretty unique. At least from my understanding, from me knowing other taco trucks, that was the only place you can actually eat inside.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think just in general, I've never heard any other place in the country, in the world in general, where you
No,
could do that.
seriously.
So
Only Turlock.
So now that we're talking food, this is actually a perfect segue. And this is something that I'm going to start doing with all the guests. But how about we give a favorite shout out to, like your favorite restaurant? It could even be more than one if you have more than one. And just like a place in town as well, non-food related.
So I'm going to go like old school, somewhere that I used to go a lot. Middle school, like somewhere I used to go a lot and still go. And then one of my new faves. Okay. So old school is definitely El Rosal. I don't know if you've ever been there, but they used to be over by the Prime Shine off Golden State in that little shopping center. It's called the Turlock Town Center. But anyway, they're the best Mexican food. Then they moved over by Costco, and now actually they're not open right now. Their old Costco location is becoming a marijuana dispensary, and they're supposed to move back into that original location that I used to go to as a kid. So that was somewhere like my family would go for every single birthday party, every like after softball games, like anytime we went to eat somewhere as a family, it was either like pizza or El Rosal. And my family all moved up to Oregon, so I'm the only one left here. So I don't really like do family dinners that much anymore. And then somewhere that's always been a constant for me is Jura's. I know, like, have you tried Jura's before?
Yeah, I think I've been there once. Yeah.
It's okay. It's a pizza parlor, but like I don't go there for the pizza. The pizza's great, but the real like draw for me is the hot wings. I think they're the best hot wings, not only in Turlock, but in the 209. So if you've never had Jura's hot wings, check them out. And one of my new favorites is a downtown restaurant that opened a couple of years ago called First and Main. My boyfriend and I love to go there like on date nights. Something just fell off my desk. I'm sorry. We like to go there on date nights, like special occasions. It's just a good excuse to like get cute and go out to dinner. And the food and cocktails are amazing. So those are my big three.
I've had a vegetarian burger at that last place you just mentioned. It was a couple of years back. It was pretty good. And El Rosal, I've been to their other locations, not the Turlock ones, but the ones in like Modesto, Riverbank. Mm-hmm. And I'm surprised they're moving because I felt like their location near the freeway was perfect, right? But maybe I'm assuming rent was higher because of that.
Yeah, I believe the building owner sold the building to the dispensary. So I don't think, or I think El Rosal owned the building, and whoever sold it to the marijuana company that's moving in. So I'm sure, that was a really high price that the dispensary paid because, I mean, we've seen so far there's 2 dispensaries in Turlock, and the one by the freeway is doing a million times better than the one that's like in the middle of town. So I'm assuming this third one really wanted that spot right by the freeway. So I'm sure they were willing to pay a hefty price for it. So, it's surprising and kind of sad. I'm glad they're able to move back to their old location, but yeah, it's pretty crazy that they are moving after so many years there.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what happened. And they were like, if you get a really good offer, you can't deny it, right? Because we're just
exactly.
going to go back to our spot.
The price is right.
People still go, right? I could think of places that I like to go to, even if they're not right off the freeway, you'll still make the drive because the food's worth it. So
yeah. Definitely.
So looking at like non-food related places, if someone not from Turlock or who's never visited Turlock would ask you like, what's that one place I should go to? Like, what place would you direct them to that they definitely need to go to?
Well, this is funny because it's like fairly new, but God, I love it. It's the 10 Pin Fun Center. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's Turlock's bowling alley. There's an arcade. There's a restaurant. There's awesome bars with awesome cocktails. Honestly, like before the pandemic, we were going there multiple times a week because it's so fun. Like you can get a drink, you have a wristband, you can take your drink into the arcade and play, kind of like a Dave and Buster's situation. And just really, really great people work there and we love it. So that's probably the most fun thing to do in Turlock, unless you like to eat. If you like to drink and dance, there are some bars on like the Utter Place, Grand Cru. It's really it. There used to be a club type atmosphere called Red Brick, but that went away. I'm like the pandemic changed me. I'm like sitting here like, what do I do for fun? I watch Netflix now, but if I've had to pick like one place in Turlock to go, probably 10 pin. Another recommendation would be an Academica soccer game. They're Turlock's semi-professional soccer team. And I mean, it speaks for itself. Who doesn't want to go watch a pro soccer game? They have a lot of fans go out to the games, and they're really good. They let off like smoke bombs and stuff when they score goals. It's just a fun atmosphere.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that because I just went to my first game last weekend, and I'm looking forward to going to more games this season too.
I'm so happy that like more people are finding out about them and like supporting them. It's great.
Yeah, they're doing a great job over there. I mean, I just interviewed a couple episodes back Michael Rocha, right, their GM, and we had a good conversation about that. And it's great, right? We're getting more sports for Turlock and more things for people to do on the weekend, and it's growing.
Yeah, and soon there will be WPSL games to go to because they just announced that they're part of the WPSL's expansion. So we'll actually have a semi-professional women's team in Turlock, which is like basically Division 2 when it comes to women's professional soccer. So super exciting. I'm stoked.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I mean, like I said, they're doing great things in Academica and even more great things to come, I'm sure, right? I mean, who knows, right? The sky's the limit for them, and they're in a really awesome location as well. And I mean, the location just like shouts Central Valley, and
yes.
I really enjoyed that aspect of it too, right? I mean, you experience everything Central Valley if you go to a game.
You're gonna get the mosquitoes, the farmland, and it's right next to a Catholic parish church, so it does more Central Valley than that. I love it.
When you were saying earlier 10 pin, I actually went there before they opened, but pandemic hit and I haven't been able to actually go there now that they're open. But whenever I get a chance, I definitely want to go because I enjoy bowling, but I haven't done it since before the pandemic, so I'm long overdue.
Get the gutter ball. It's a really good drink.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's it. So do they name them after like bowling terminology?
Yeah,
everything is.
I'm like trying to think. I'm like, maybe that's the only one that's named after a bowling term, but that's just what I always get. So that's why the name is right at the top of my head. They have a lot of other good drinks though too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think that one's called that because like you might end up in the gutter if you drink one too many. Well, your bowling ball, not your body.
Oh yeah. Yeah, who knows, right? Depends on
me. Yeah, right. Depends on how the night goes.
Hopefully it's like towards the end of your bowling game and not at the beginning.
Yeah.
So moving on to our alma mater, Stan State. Of course, I have to bring them up because, I always do like to bring them up. I know you majored in communications and media studies. You were there from 2011 to 2016. So at some point, maybe we came across one another too. Let me know more about like why did you choose your major? Like what led to you choosing that, and also was Stan State always like your first go-to option?
Yeah, so Stan State was always my go-to option just because I wasn't ready to leave yet, and I also knew that I could play softball there. So I was a recruited walk-on. I didn't have a scholarship, but they did ask me to come play for the program. So to me, like I hadn't really been recruited by any other schools and I wanted to play softball. So it was a no-brainer. I mean, it was in my hometown and I could play for a softball program that I grew up watching. So that was what led me to Stan State. And now looking back, like I would tell anyone from any city, any state to come to Stan State because I think it's a great school. It gets, sometimes people give it a bad rap because it's in Turlock, but I think Turlock's a really fun place and it's definitely what you make of it. So I definitely enjoyed my time there. And I actually started out as an English major. I thought I was going to be an English teacher because I really just like writing and reading. That's like all I'm good at. So went with the intention of becoming an English teacher, had no idea like what the path was even to do that. But I thought majoring in English would be a good start. And then I took a writing for the media course, and I realized this is really easy to write for a newspaper. And so I was like, do I want to write like a book and be an English teacher? Because that's what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be an English teacher and like write a novel on the side when I was at home, and become like the next J.K. Rowling. Literally, that's what I thought. And I was like, or, I can like actually be guaranteed to, instead of be teaching and like doing writing on the side, I can make a living writing. Because once I took that media course, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I was like, okay, how do I become a journal? Like, how do I do this? And so I obviously found out that you major in communication studies. Stan State didn't have a journalism program at the time, or a journalism major. And then I was like, okay, well, communication is, what's like my options with that? And then I realized like the thing I loved most in life was sports. And coupled with like writing and maybe talking to people, I was like, maybe I can become a sports journalist, or even a sideline reporter, I would see Amy G interviewing players after the game during Giants games and things like that, and think that is what I want to do. So then, I started working for the school paper at Stan State. I was an editor for the paper. And that was when I realized like, all right, sports is really cool, but, community news and writing about Turlock is also really fun, because I did the community beat for the school paper. So I was writing about businesses in town and all that stuff. And so while I always had sports in the back of my mind, come senior year, my last semester, super senior year, there became a job opening at the Turlock Journal. And so I applied for it while I was still going to school, started out part-time, and then ended up full-time, and now I'm here. So it was quite the like kind of changing my mind about things, but really it was all in the same realm. I knew I wanted to do words, basically, whether that was writing them, reading them, speaking them. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up here. I do have aspirations to follow that passion for sports. But I mean, I've been at the Journal 6 years, and it's been great. And I do cover high school sports and some pro sports. So I do get to fulfill that side of my heart,
Oh, that's good that you're able to cover two different worlds, right? And still write.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like still do what you like to do, and follow what you like to follow. So it's good you found that place that lets you do both.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of like the Signal, what was like the first article that you had to write for them, and like just talk to us more about like what that was like, right? Because it's like your first article, and so you have to figure out, okay, how do I even start this, and what do I write it on, and all that.
My first articles, I'm pretty sure I can still go back on the website and read them, and I have, and they are horrible. I believe my first article that I wrote, and I could be wrong, but it was about this apartment complex across the street from the school, the Vista, which is built now. It's the tallest buildings in Turlock. And I would say, based on my experience covering the city, it's a problematic complex. There's always something going on, like a fire alarm or people stuck in an elevator, just crazy stuff. But what I wrote was how the neighborhood around that empty lot didn't want the apartment complex there. And so I remember thinking, okay, so what inspired the story was there was a fence along the backside of the property, and it said like no to apartments or something with a big phone number. And so I was like, great place to start. I'll call that number. And so, yeah, I ended up calling the number and talking to the neighbors and finding out why they didn't want this next to their their homes. And I also had to, look through city documents, see the plans for the apartment complex. So honestly, it was like probably the best thing I could have started out with, because it required me to do some, investigating. I saw the sign, I called the number, I talked to people, which when you first start out, it can be very daunting, like calling people out of the blue and asking to interview them, which now I'll do it to a person standing on the side of the street. Like, I don't care. But, and then I had to, learn how to go onto the city website and look up planning agendas and look at, planning projects and blueprints and, see city staff reports and really look through them and see what the story was. So that was the first thing I ever wrote about. And I don't think anyone at Stan State really cared that much.
Well, I gotta say, I remember reading that. I feel like it was that one. I feel like it was that article. Yeah, because I was really curious as to know like what was being built there at the time, right? And then when I found out it was a complex, I was like, I wanted to know more about it because I was a student blogger with admissions and outreach at Stan. So I was like, if there's something I could blog about, that might be the thing. And so I read more on it too. And I think I may have read your article because I would read the Signal. Yeah.
You were the one person that read it. It's really, I mean, it was cool just to, realize like, all right, you're not allowed to have an opinion, that's what I try to do most with what I write. And to this day is just like present both sides and let people make up their own mind. And so it was like, yeah, I totally understand why these people don't want 3-story buildings peering into their backyard. I totally get that. Or basically a dorm situation right behind them. But then I was like, students need more housing, so it's like, you get to see both sides as a journalist. And it's nice. Sometimes it keeps your perspective in check.
Yeah. That was a interesting dilemma, right, at the time. And I still remember that. And I know some people that lived there and I would hear all the stories and all that. And there are a lot of things that I was like, I don't know where that happens, but
yeah. And what's funny? We don't even have, the city of Turlock doesn't even have a fire engine that could reach up to a third floor.
Oh.
So if there was a fire, we'd have to wait like for a fire truck from a different town. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it so serious. But I'm just saying, like, come on, poor planning.
Yeah, maybe it shouldn't have been. That's all. Yeah. Well, hopefully that changes because if anything does happen, they need to make sure that they can stop it.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that was like, oh my God, that was like, maybe 9 years ago. I'm not good at math. Yeah, probably 8 or 9 years ago. And the guy whose number was on the sign, to this day, I'm friends with him on Facebook. He'll message me when like things happen at the apartment complex, like, hey, just let you know, like, I'm just like, okay, there's nothing I can do about it. But he's really nice. And it's just funny that, still I'm in contact with him.
And I think that's the other good thing, right? Is that like you're forming these connections with people, right? So if anything happens, they're like alerting you like, hey, you remember that thing you wrote about?
Yeah.
I got some updates on that if you want to say.
Yeah.
Is that normally how it happens with other people?
Yeah, that's pretty much, you just meet people and they keep you in mind,
Before I kind of shy away from the topic of Stan, I have to ask this question, but what were some of your favorite moments while you were at Stan, not just with the Signal, right, but just in general as a student and maybe doing other things on campus?
I mean, my freshman year playing softball, even though, it was obviously hell and I ended up quitting, which I think we had 10 girls quit the team the same time I did before my sophomore year. So it was really fun though. Moments that weren't spent, like the moments that we were just with each other, like whether it was on the bus or, in the hotel rooms where we would stay on road trips, like it's surreal to me. It feels like a different lifetime, but I love looking back on those memories. And, all my teammates are like having kids and married now. So it's, those were some of my favorite memories. And then working at the University Police. So after I stopped playing softball, I got a part-time job and I was a student officer, and I would go around campus and lock up the buildings every single weeknight. So Monday through Friday, every night I was either it started out driving around a golf cart on campus, and then we got to ride the segways. So I would segway around campus every single night, locking up every single door that you see at Stan State. It was a really cool job, but I made some of my best friends working there. Like I ended up living with one of my coworkers and his boyfriend for 2 years. And we just like had so much fun. All the students that worked there, it was like, you know, in college, you join sororities, you join fraternities. I never had to do that because I had my softball team. And then, you know, when I started working at the university police department, we like had our own friend group. Like I was able to make friends that way, which was really cool. And I'll just look back on it as some of the funniest moments of my life, just like riding a Segway around campus with like one of your best friends, you know. And I had some pretty nasty falls on the Segway, I'm not gonna lie, but that was definitely the best part of college, was working there. And we had Warrior Day every year, which is like this huge concert where everyone gets super drunk. And I never actually attended Warrior Day because I was always working as a narc with the police department. And so my job was to take pictures of people when they got put in the drunk tank at Warrior Day. And I saw friends get arrested. It was very rare that they would get arrested. Like it was only if they did something bad or like resisted an officer. And really then they like get sent to the police department and their parents have to come pick them up. Right. But it was a lot of fun. And, you know, just gave me an appreciation for that part of the university when it comes to public safety and everything that they do, like active shooter drills and everything that they do to keep the campus safe. So that was definitely the best part about going to Stan, was working at the police department.
Well, that's interesting. Just locking doors at night.
Yeah,
like,
I do want to make that clear. I for the most part, I just locked up the doors. I did not give many tickets. Didn't sit right with me, so I stuck to locking up campus. Which I would work 4-hour shifts, and I can say this because my boss, the chief of police, was my uncle. So, and we've already talked about it, but my shift was 4 hours, and it literally took me an hour to lock up campus. So I would literally lock up campus and then just go chill in like a classroom and watch Netflix on my phone. And it was the best job ever. Like he hooked it up. It was great.
Well, you could have given all the tickets you wanted. I always followed the rules. I always had my parking pass. So I wanted everyone to check, actually, because parking pass was a little expensive. So I was like,
dude, oh my God. The highway robbery. I don't even want to know how much it is now. Like, I can't even imagine how much it is now. Because I mean, think like I was in college 6 years ago, like inflation, you know?
Oh yeah, it's probably like $500-$600 at this point, right? Because it seemed like it kept going up, like at least $50 each year. So yeah,
and you know what? Have you seen like the new student center? You probably voted for it while you went there. I know I voted for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's really amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing. And then they just redid the library as well. And I'm just like, the library, I don't know if you've seen that, but it is unrecognizable. It's amazing. And I'm just like, God, should I go back to school? Like, I want to enjoy all these things. Like, if that was there, if it was like that when I went there, I never would have left. Like, I would have stayed on campus all day, which is exactly what they're trying to do with that. But you gotta check it out. You gotta check out the library, dude. It's cool.
I actually went recently, but they were locked. Like, you know, you couldn't really go inside unless you had an appointment. But I felt the same way you felt. I was like, why did they do this after we like leave, right? And now I'm just thinking like I want to go back. I mean, I think I'm just gonna go get another bachelor's, and whether I need it or not, I'm just gonna go back and just experience this again.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I had the same thought. So I feel you.
And I think it's really good that they did that, right? And I think anyone touring the school, it's going to stand out even much more now, right? Because before the waterfalls were like the thing, right? The fountains, right. That was the main thing, right? The people, I think, left after seeing the campus. And now after seeing all these things, it's like, well, now we have other things that people could leave with that image of, that might kind of encourage people to say, like, I want to go here because I'll actually be able to enjoy the campus and I'll have to go out, right? And just have everything there, because I'm on your boat. I wouldn't really enjoy it as much. I would just go out and just go get food, come back, wait for class to start, and then I'm getting out of the car and going to class. So
Yeah. And now the buildings match the beauty of the campus, with all the lakes and stuff. It's really nice.
although Bizzini's next, I have to say, I don't know when they're going to
Oh
plan on
yeah.
remodeling that, but they need to remodel that, and let's
I
put
think
some
that's
stairs in there.
last. Yeah, I think that's last on their list. Obviously.
Yeah, I think that one's going to require a lot more.
And I did find out that a lot of the new buildings and everything have, like, this was already the case with the new science building that they put in, like, probably 6 or 7 years ago. All of the new doors lock by themselves. So I'm like, I would have been out of it. I wouldn't have had a job if all the buildings were new, So I'm like, damn, it's good when I got out when I did.
Or maybe your job would have just been like just double checking each door, right? Because it fails
Going
sometimes.
and pulling each one.
Would have been much quicker.
Yeah.
Good.
That's funny.
Nice. You got 7 hours of Netflix now.
I would already like swerve by on my Segway and just like lock it really quick. So it'd be even easier to just swerve by and pull on the door handles.
Wow. Well, it's good that they're doing that. I mean, it just makes sure that all the doors are locked. And I'm sure they probably have some sort of like card key system now, right?
Yes,
and
that's
just,
exactly right.
Wow. No more keys.
Yeah.
Oh.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's changed a lot, and it's probably just going to keep like improving and all that. And yeah, we need to go back. There's a lot of things I want to go back for. So there's no issue there. I can find something.
Yeah. And what I said earlier holds true even more with all the improvements they've made. Like it's the best bang for your buck college probably in the state. That's what I would say. They have great teachers, great facilities now, and go Warriors.
Yeah. And still low cost, right? I mean, they do all these things, or at least as far as I think. I don't know if they're going to raise them. Yeah.
Compared to other schools.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oof. Big difference, especially for grad school. I mean, that I was so shocked when I when I saw how like different it was from other schools.
Yeah.
But now I want to move on to talk more about the Turlock Journal. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but to tell me more about like how it was when you got started there. Also, like your first article there. Like what differences did you notice between being there and being at the Signal on campus?
Yeah. Oh, I love talking about this. So I actually definitely remember my first article for the Turlock Journal because it was when the CSU Chancellor, Timothy White, he used to be Chancellor back in 2016 when I started working at the Journal. He came to Stan State for a visit, and it was when they were raising tuition. So there were some protesters there. So I basically covered like him coming to Stan State, and I remember being so nervous, and I actually got to go afterward and interview him. And so it was me, someone from some TV station, I can't remember, and then a reporter from the Modesto Bee. And I was like, it's so funny looking back because I was sitting at that table like after his whole speech and going back into this private room where we were getting a one-on-one interview with him. And I was just like, dude, I do not belong here. I'm not ready for this. Like, why the hell am I interviewing the chancellor? I don't know what to ask him. I don't think I asked him a question. Honestly, I think I just sat there, which is hilarious because like now that's just an average day for me. But at the time it was so groundbreaking. And going back and reading that article now, the first one I wrote for the Journal, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just I've grown so much since then. Not only like personality wise and believing in myself, but like writing as well. I've gotten better. And so it's funny to look back and I was like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And I'm just like, dude, get to the point. So that was interesting. Working at the Signal, my advisor, Shannon Stevens, who is also a comm professor that taught me about the history of journalism. She's the best. She is the reason I was able to go seamlessly from the school paper into a newspaper. Some people go and get their master's degrees and stuff, but I just kind of hopped right in. And she made me think that like a newsroom was going to be the most cutthroat, which, you know what? It might just be that my newsroom is really cool, but I was absolutely terrified. I was like, dude, Professor Dr. Stevens, like, they're going to eat me alive in this newsroom. Like, they're going to tear my stories to pieces, be like, this is wrong. You need to fix this. You need to do this. But like, honestly, the Turlock Journal is so chill. Like, it's more laid back than my school newspaper was, which wouldn't change anything about my school newspaper because it should be preparing you for the real world. And luckily for me, it made the real world seem like a piece of cake. Granted, it's the only newsroom that I've worked in personally, but I mean, I've been in other newsrooms and talked to other reporters. And really, if you end up with a good editor and colleagues that like have your back, it's a walk in the woods. So that would definitely be like the thing that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to kind of get torn apart a little more, and maybe like I'm not giving myself enough credit, and maybe I have just been good enough at the job where I didn't need my stuff to be torn apart. But you know, it's definitely not what I was expecting. But I do know that the journal is a small paper and it's different than a bigger newsroom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad that it wasn't like that, because you see the movies, you see the stories that people share on those things. So it's it's good that didn't happen.
Yeah, and if my next newsroom is more like that, like I'm so glad that here in Turlock with this newsroom was where I was able to start, because if I went straight from college, being that girl that was scared to interview the chancellor, if I went into a newsroom that was like cutthroat like that, I wouldn't have survived. But now I'm a seasoned vet. I can handle anything. Like, bring it at me. I literally don't care as long as you're making me better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, if that would have happened, I mean, you probably would have been like, let me explore a career change, because it's not yours.
It's too much.
Well, on that note, actually, have you come across any moments that are unexpected, right? Something happens as you're trying to cover something. Has that happened before? I know you said everything's chill, but have you had those moments before?
The only thing I can think of is like having to improvise, like oh no, my camera's not working, I can't take pictures, like gotta snap on my phone really quick. As far as anything crazy happening to me, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, we're in Turlock, you know what I'm saying? I've got to do some really cool things, like cover 49er games, interview MLB players, like see elephants and stuff like that. But like, I can't think of anything like where I was just like I saw a video of a newscaster on TV getting ran over by a car while she's doing a live shot. Nothing like that has ever happened to me. Yeah, she was fine. She kept going. Like, it was insane, but I would have stopped. I would have been like, cut it, get. So I'm maybe something will come to me, but off the top of my head, it's pretty chill. Honestly, it's pretty chill.
That's good. No, that's a good response.
Yeah, right.
You're like, that's why I'm still at the journal.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I'm like, yep, no risk of dying yet. You know what? Actually, I will say I thought of something that was pretty crazy, but like, as a journalist, like, live for it. I would go back to this day 100 times over. It was the day of the Modesto March during the George Floyd protests. Turlock Black Lives Matter planned a march in Modesto that we went to cover. And by the end, like, as many have, the protests turned into something it wasn't meant to be when, a few agitators began to harass police and stuff. And it just turns into something that it wasn't meant to be. Right. And so we're in the thick of it, filming it. And it was crazy. I mean, the riot police came out in Modesto, right in the streets of downtown Modesto. It was so many people, so many cops in riot gear. I didn't even know they were out there. I was just filming these protesters kind of having a confrontation with the normally dressed police officers that were out there. And then someone threw a water bottle at the cop's head, and that gave the riot police the excuse to just come in and just start shoving the shit out of people, basically. And I got shoved from behind, and I looked, and there's a freaking police or a sheriff's deputy, you know, decked out in riot gear with a baton, like pushing me out of the way. And I'm just like, God, here we go. I got hit in the foot with a rubber bullet. It didn't hurt, but I was like, damn, that could have been my calf or my head. And I remember just like holding my press pass up, like they even cared, you know, like they weren't going to treat me any different. And yeah, I was like a little scared, but I had been watching it on the news all week in other places. And I knew that like my duty was to stay there and record what happened. Because that's what we are. We're documentarians of history. But that was probably the craziest situation I've ever been in.
Oh, wow. You know, I remember watching Central Valley TV's live.
I was right next to him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We were talking, we were hanging out. I see them all the time. We actually went on a marijuana bust a few months ago together. We were in the same ride along. So they're great people. They do a good job.
Yeah, no, yeah, I know that. I think they went from there to Stockton because there's going to be another one happening, I think, later on that day.
That's exactly. He was trying to decide. I was literally talking to him. He was trying to decide if he should stay or if he should go. And like, I'm sure he's glad he stayed because that turned out being 10 times crazier than the one in Stockton. So,
which I was shocked when I found out that all those things happen here in my hometown and all that. I'm like, what's going on? Those things don't normally happen here, but.
It was wild. Yeah, we have a video on the Turlock Journal YouTube account if anyone wants to go see what that day looked like. It was pretty wild. Cool day for me as a journalist. Like, not gonna lie, it was historical.
Yeah, and you know that, I mean, hats off to all you journalists who do that for us, right? Because we want to know what's going on, and it's good for us to find out these things and not just hear them from people, right? But actually be able to watch it and see what happened. So
yeah.
So I know you just mentioned that moment, but how about let's go on a different note, but mention your most embarrassing moment. Do you have, I know you probably have maybe some, has that happened with the journal?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I embarrass myself every single day. So we have Studio 209, obviously, and I feel like every single episode of that, I embarrass myself. I did a Twitter thread one time of all the embarrassing things that I've done on that show. It's like, and it's not even like embarrassed. It's not even embarrassing. It's just me being an idiot and not caring like what people think of me. Like, like I'll tell my producer Frankie to purposely leave things in. Like, we did a hiking segment and I fell down a hill. And I was like, you have to leave that in. It's hilarious. Like, it's embarrassing, but it's funny. You know, me dressing up in a like Renaissance outfit and going to the Renaissance fair and like doing catapults and just like being a weirdo, just stuff like that. Is really it's all self-inflicted embarrassment. I feel, I can't think like something non-specific that I would think of, like some I get information wrong, like talking to people, you know, and they're like, actually, I'm like, oh yes, I knew that. Like, you know, little do they know a lot of times when you're interviewing someone, you're learning about the topic on the fly and doing your best to like keep up, you know, but I really can't think of anything like specific where I was just like mortified, you know. It's I might think of one while we talk, just like I thought of a crazy moment.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, if you're one that enjoys leaving like bloopers or leaving something that would get cut off, then you wouldn't really have an embarrassing moment because you don't really consider them, because to you it's like, keep them, they're gonna make someone laugh, and that's good. So that's a good trait, by the way. I think it's good that you can make fun of yourself because someone else is going to find enjoyment in that. And if they're not having a good day, you just made them laugh. So
yeah, I mean, I grew up watching like Jackass and Andy Milonakis and things like that. So I have number one, a weird sense of humor, and number two, like will embarrass myself for entertainment.
Well, yeah, that's good. Well, one last thing I wanted to cover here before we end today's show. I know you also have a podcast. You're like the first person, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, and I'm sorry to whoever I already interviewed, but I think you're the first that I know has currently a podcast that's going on, and that is the 49ers podcast called the 49 Carets podcast with Steph Sanchez. Tell me more about how that got started.
Yeah. So, obviously, I have podcast experience through Werq. We do podcasts. Actually, we have one called the 209 podcast for 209 magazine. So kind of same lane as you, but not as focused. We do a broad range of things on that one. And I mean, anyone that follows me on Twitter knows I'm a huge Bay Area sports fan. So obviously, Giants, Warriors, Niners, specifically. And I was approached by a group of people on Twitter that I was already friends with. They were going to be starting kind of a conglomerate. A lot of them already had their own podcasts. The plan was to have a website called 49ers Goldmine, where we would produce content, including podcasts, and really were interested in me coming on board as a podcast talent. They thought that, there was room for a female-led podcast. And obviously I agreed. I just never thought that I really had the platform to start one or do anything like that. So once they planted that seed in my head, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, there need to be women talking about football. There are so many guys talking about the Niners, right? Like, I could do that too. I sit and talk with my guy friends about the 49ers 24/7. And so what came next was I need a co-host. So I obviously knew I wanted the co-host to be a girl. And that was when someone sent me Steph's Twitter handle. We'd never interacted before in my life. And I sent her a DM and I was like, hey, this is the sitch. Like, we're going to start a podcast with of these dudes. Are you down? She's like, hell yeah, I'm down. She loves the 49ers just as much as me. She's even smarter than me when it comes to football. So she was really like the biggest blessing to me. I think we make the perfect pair. And yeah, from there we Zoomed. Like, we've never met in real life. Like, we met on Zoom to see if we because if it was awkward, obviously you can't podcast together, right? And so we just hit it off immediately. Like, I believe we have the same sense of humor. Like, she's really one of my good friends now. And we started a little over a year ago. Last January, we recorded our first episode right before the draft talk started. So we've been podcasting all through the Niners drafting Trey Lance, the Jimmy Garoppolo controversy, this crazy season they just had. And, we're still going. So we have over 1,000 YouTube subscribers now and almost 1,000 Twitter followers. And it is so fun just talking about football with my friend, basically. and like, people actually tune in and watch. We do live shows and they comment, while we're streaming. And I never would have imagined that, so to just have one person listen, it's like, okay, that's cool. Pretty soon we're going to have a 49ers player on the podcast. I don't want to say who it is yet, but we've had the 49ers team reporter, Angelina Martin, on our podcast. We've had some local beat writers on the podcast that are really popular and write great work. So it's really been a cool way to meet more people in the football land and just do something that we like.
If you want to meet new friends, create a podcast. I mean, we both have mentioned that before, right? But I think it's so awesome, like the power of podcasting and with Zoom, right? How you could record just as we are doing now. And as I've always recorded all the shows that I do. And so it's really awesome. I mean, it is a really great thing that you guys created that. And I'm with you, right? I always say the same thing. I'm like, oh, as long as I get one listen, that's great, right? And then you end up getting a lot more than that. And you're like, okay, that's really awesome too, right? But really, it's like, I don't care how many people listen, as long as we get one person, even just sending me a message. I enjoyed your show. Great. I mean, I'll still look at the stats because I'm a big stats guy, but
you're always going to, you can't help it.
But yeah, that's really cool. I'm really glad that you guys are going to have a player on the show. I know how great it is when you're able to interview athletes, especially, you know, when you can use a platform to actually do so, right? I mean, it's something else, right? I mean, I have my soccer podcast as well, and so I know how it feels when you get to talk to these athletes who you see on TV, who at least like me not being a journalist, I never imagined I'd be like talking to him, right? But you know, you get a platform, you get something started, and before you know it, like you get the right contacts and you have them on the show, you get to talk to them, and you end the show and you're like, what did I just do? I just interviewed like this guy that I would always see on TV, and I never thought I'd be speaking to him right now, but it just happened.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, like, you know, with Twitter, it's as easy as sending someone a message. Like, you don't have to be anyone. And, you know, there's people out there nice enough to respond and like take the time, you know. So that would be my advice to anyone like wanting to start a podcast. Like, you know, just do it. You don't have to be anyone or do anything to start a podcast. Like, literally just turn on the microphone and start talking and shoot your shot with anyone that you want to come on your show. Like, I didn't think that the player from the Niners would message me back, but here we are. So.
Yeah. And it all starts with one, right? That's what I always say. You interview one person, and then before you know it, it's almost like a tree, right? It just grows, and you have other people on, and then before you know it, you're like, oh, I just got this person on. And it was thanks to the fact that you've been interviewing so many people, and you know, they can go back, look at your backlog and say, oh, this is a show that's already been pretty established, and they've had these people there. I know this person and they refer me there. And so that's how I got one of like a legendary player in Mexico, soccer player. I never thought I would get him on, but he went on. And yeah, I mean, I was a little starstruck at first, but
yeah,
it gets better with time after you do interviews. And, you know, it's just like you're seeing a friend, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, like I said, you can totally relate. Like, from when I started to now, like, it's crazy. Like, where will we be in another 6 years, you know?
Yeah, but the power of podcasting. So if anyone wants to start one, just like you said, right, just get started. It's not even that expensive. You just get a microphone, which they're not that expensive either, as people might imagine. So yeah, it's right
just
there.
Do it.
Basically. Yeah, that quote is spot on. Always. Years later, it's still...
Do you know? Did you know I was doing the Shia LaBeouf?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Okay. Just do it. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That meme always gets me. One last thing. You know, I always like to give the guests their time to give any shout outs. This is your time to say anything that you wanted to say that you didn't get to say before. Go for it.
All right. Shout out Turlock Journal. Shout out 209 Magazine. Follow them on social media. If you know, you're listening to this podcast, so you're obviously interested in the area. So you can follow us on all social media. If you want to follow me, I'm at Ange Wrights on Twitter, and our podcast is at 49K Pod on Twitter and anywhere you can stream your favorite podcast. It's the 49 Carats podcast. If you're into football, just two gals talking the game. Yeah, it's going to be a fun summer of covering the off-season shenanigans. And that's all I got to shout out. That's all I care about in life. Shout out my dogs.
Yeah, that's all good. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Angelina. It was really a pleasure to be able to talk to you and learn a little bit more about Turlock, because I feel like you can never know a lot about there. And I was just there a couple of years, but I'm always want to know what's going on because I don't get to go as often now. So yeah.
Yeah, you can never know enough about Turlock. I'll leave with that.
Thank you so much again to Angelina for being on the show tonight. We all really learned a lot about Turlock, and I think if you're a journalist, you've found a lot of inspiration in tonight's episode. And also, if you're trying to start a podcast, as you heard, right? You heard us nerding out to podcasts and to being able to start one. And that's all it really takes, is actually being able to have the idea, you find the people that can start it with you. And as you heard from Angelina, and I actually went through this myself, you usually start a podcast sometimes with people that you don't really know. And then they end up becoming great friends. And I can say that of my co-hosts that I have with my other podcasts that I do. So as I said, if you're trying to meet new friends and if you're trying to talk about a shared hobby, podcasting is the way to go. And I know we were mentioning, right, that as long as we get one listen, that's all that matters. But at the end of the day, really, what really matters is that you're actually able to talk to other people and, enjoy whatever it is that you're talking about, especially with hobbies and whatnot. It's a really great way to have that time to talk to others about it. And that's one of the joys of podcasting that you get. So if you haven't subscribed to this podcast yet, please hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to the show. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, they also have a function where you can leave a review on their website. So I'd appreciate if you can leave a review on there. You can also leave a review on Facebook as well. Let me know what you'd like to see from their show. If you have any guests that you think would be great for the show, please feel free to send me a message on social media at the 209 Journey on Twitter or just the 209 Journey podcast on Facebook. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to tonight's show. Be on the lookout for our upcoming podcast, which will likely be posted next week. I'm going to try and post a podcast once a week. I know I said a similar thing in the last episode, but now I actually have guests lined up, and I'm actually going to be posting an episode at least once a week. So if you subscribe, you're going to find out about new episodes each week. And my upcoming guest is actually going to be another fellow Turlock native. So we're going to keep it on the Turlock theme. So you'll definitely want to tune in to make sure that you listen to that podcast as well. Everyone, have a great night, and we'll see you next week here on the 209 Journey podcast.